What's up, guys? My name is Rob from Rob on the Run podcast, a running podcast for all healthy lifestyles. And this is our first episode, our very, very, very first episode. And I am so honored to have Mimi Smith. Mimi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be the first person on here and to get this podcast kind of kicked off.
Yeah. And I appreciate you taking the invite here. As many people know, I used to have another podcast. So Mimi is actually technically the second time that she'll be here, but the first one for this podcast, and hopefully many more times, because I'm pretty sure Mimi's going to do some awesome things coming up and whatnot. But Mimi, tell us a little bit about yourself for the people that don't know you, that's going to see you for the first time. Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so Rob and I got connected through a friend and both of ours and a
Hmm.
coach that I've had and kind of mentor up here in Dallas, which I met when I moved to Dallas in I guess the summer of 2022. So I've been in Texas for about a year and a half now. I'm originally from Chicago. I've been in school for North Carolina for a really long time and came out here after my graduate school. And I've been a big runner all my life. Started when I was in like sixth, seventh grade, and ran through college. I ran at Wake Forest University. And after college, I slowly got into the longer distance efforts. I did a couple of halves. And then when I moved out here, I started to really get into marathon running. And I've been able to do Boston and Chicago. And then this past February, during my Chicago run, I qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon, and I raced in the Orlando trials February 3rd.
That's awesome. And by the way, you did amazing. I followed you and tracked you and had like my computer on one side, and I had the actual event on my main TV, and I just kept on screaming like a schoolgirl trying to pump you up. So hopefully maybe some of those cheering you heard it from here from Texas all the way to Orlando. But
Oh, yeah.
congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank
Um,
you.
as runners, we love to see some of our friends get to their goals, whether if it's finishing your first marathon or PRing that race that you always wanted, or like yourself getting to the Olympic trials, which is such a great experience, I'm pretty sure. And it's something that we would like to know a little bit about it. How was it? What was your experience from the moment that you got there to, I don't know if you can explain to us how the process works when you get your bib.
Mhm.
Tell us about it.
It was an interesting process. I think my biggest takeaways from this marathon is even though we were, on paper, I'm a very experienced runner.
Hmm.
Um, every time I've run a marathon, I've learned something about my training. I've learned something about the way to race. I've learned about my pre-race ritual, learned
Hmm.
about my post-race ritual. And I think although I'm walking away from the Olympic trials with a really positive attitude. I mean, I think it wasn't just the one race. It was a lot of things within a year to get to that point. I didn't end up getting a PR. The conditions were pretty brutal, and
Hmm.
most of the runners, there was very few individuals who PR'd. But when I talked to most of the runners after the race, a lot of us hit the wall by mile 10.
Oh, wow.
Versus later on, like that's when I really started to feel it. So I just think I took my experience out of this was it was a very challenging mental race for me, and I learned a lot about it. We got there on Thursday, and you go to this hotel that you were put in by, the Olympic Trial Committee,
Hmm.
and those hosting us in Orlando. So we're all kind of staying in the same hotel. In that hotel, they've got a room where they've got breakfasts and dinner and lunch set up for you. And then they've got a stand where you go collect your bibs.
Hmm.
It was really interesting. In the same place that you collect your bib, they check your uniforms, and they were very,
Okay.
very, very strict about their
Oh,
uniforms.
wow.
So they basically wanted us to bring everything from our sports bras down to our socks and our racing shoes, our
Wow.
watches, any headbands that we would be wearing, we had to bring. You were
Okay.
not allowed to wear any branding. So I run for Heartbreak Running Company based out of
Hmm.
Boston, Chicago. So
Hmm.
because they were affiliated with Heartbreak Run Club, I was able to run with the Heartbreak logo on my chest.
Okay.
Similar to runners have like their Tracksmith logo or their Nike logo. It
Yeah.
couldn't be advertised, but you could have the logo on your jersey.
Okay.
But I'm also partnered with Carb Fuel, which is a running gel,
Hmm.
and I wasn't allowed to wear anything that had Carb Fuel on it, and they were very, very strict about that. So like no hats that said it, or no, I like to wear a headband, so no headband. So that was really interesting. But once you get that all figured out, the day we got there on Thursday, essentially Friday, it was kind of like we were sitting ducks in a way. 'Cause it's really hot outside, so you're not going outside.
Yeah.
We're all athletes, and I knew a couple of people from Dallas, but I was rooming with a random athlete that was also there that we were randomly paired together, and she was super nice and great. So we hung out and talked, but like everyone's got this nervous energy,
Yeah.
and you're just in this hotel. So it was a very different experience compared to when you go do some of these other races and you're rooming with your buddies.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
serious, but we're all having like it felt more like a college setting to
Oh,
me.
wow.
So that was kind of the like pre-race experience in the hotel, but it was really cool. I got into our the elevator, and Emily Sisson and Connor Mance would be there, in my elevator going up to
Oh,
their room.
wow.
I'm there. So that was really, really cool to get to see all those runners. Yeah, got to see like, all the people who qualified in person. So that was really, really cool.
That's so awesome. And like you mentioned, it's the atmosphere is so different. And I get what you're saying because I've done races where, we rent an Airbnb, for example, and it's five or six people shacked up, and you the atmosphere is more party like, not so much party like you're drinking, but you have your friends kind of keeping uh your head out of thinking about the race and stressing about it. So I can only imagine being in there with a random stranger that you probably never met in your life, and both of y'all are trying to do something amazing the next day or the next couple of days, and it's kind of awkward, So I get what you're saying. It's so different, and to be able to do that and concentrate and not try to take away those jitters, because I'm pretty sure the jitters are
Yeah.
crazy after a big event like that. How did
More
you
more
how did
so
you
than
control that?
Yeah, I would say more so for this race than I remember my first marathon being
Hmm.
just like so nervous. And then this marathon, I was more nervous because I felt like my nervousness manifested in my hamstring was bothering me a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, and and I think when one tiny thing bothers you I think all runners do this when it could be the tiniest little thing.
Oh,
It's not
yeah.
that, and I just felt like it was getting in my head. So
Hmm.
I felt like I focused a lot on that, which in retrospect, again, a learning experience. There's nothing you can do about it. And sometimes constantly fidgeting with a tired muscle or constantly fidgeting with something doesn't
Yeah.
help the situation.
Yeah.
And I'm a physical therapist and I know that, yet easier done, or easier said than done in practice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But some of the things that I did do was, for example, my boyfriend's parents flew in and I hadn't seen them in a bit, and they were like, "Well, we don't want to disrupt you." And I was like, "No, you need to take me out. Get me out
Yeah.
of this hotel. Let's go talk about something other than running.
Yeah.
Let's get my mind off of it." So
Yeah.
I try to do things like that. To be honest, like watching something on television that you've already seen before that's super mindless.
Hmm.
I like to play like cards. So I was playing solitaire a little bit, just different
Nice.
things to like get my mind off of it is the only way that I can cool down and kind of calm myself down. Because you're right, like when you're like, for example, when you were saying when you're in an Airbnb, you're with all your friends, you're kind of goofing around,
Hmm.
you're all excited, you've been training together, everyone's kind of excited to be there
Yeah.
versus when you're with people that you don't know. I feel like you can't be as caught or as like your true self, just like goofy and kind of like saying whatever. You're a little bit more. So there was an option to room like without a roommate, but you had to pay for that hotel.
Yeah.
So obviously like the professionals are going to do that.
Yeah.
I was like, if I can get a free hotel room, I'm gonna go room with someone. I don't care.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a pretty easy sleeper. But what I thought was really cool with the whole Olympic trial experience was unless you wanted to pay for a hotel or pay to not stay at the DoubleTree,
Yeah.
like um the same perks were offered to every athlete, regardless of a person like me who, time wise, I'm not really in contending for the top three places if we're going based off seed time.
Hmm.
But the top 10 people who came in that race who have run the top times in the past 2 years, they still
Yeah.
got the same exact treatment as me.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's
so
awesome.
I thought that was pretty cool of the Olympic Committee. We weren't, and they might have been on different like hotel rooms and everything. And they might have gotten like a little bit more perk, but we
Yeah.
all stayed in the same place. We all got the same food. We
Hmm.
all had the same gear check-in and expectations. So
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
thought they did a really good job. And when we were brought to the tent area, we
Hmm.
all sat in the same tent area. Um, it was
Yeah.
pretty similar.
That's awesome, and you're right that I love it that they treated you the same as the top contender all the way to the lowest contender, I guess. Whoever just went there just knowing it was more of a personal goal than anything, which is awesome that they give you the same, I guess, royal treatment if you want to call it. So that's awesome that they do that, and good for them. Kudos for them for doing that because no matter if you're number one to number last one that crosses that line, it's good that they show them the respect that they deserve because just to be there to begin
Mhm.
with, it's already a an amazing accolade to have. I mean, I don't know how many women participated in as on the women's side in this competition.
So I think 150 women qualified. I want to say, or maybe a little bit more, maybe more like 170 people qualified. 150
Okay.
people got on the line and
Hmm.
117 finished.
You see, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Even the 150, even the ones that didn't finish, you are
Mhm.
still, the 100, you're top of the top 150 in
Mhm.
in this country, and that is, I mean, mind-boggling how awesome it is. It should feel for you uh, to be part of those top 150. It's amazing, and again, kudos to you. I don't know. I might say a lot of kudos today just because it's as a runner, I'm amazed at what the body can do, and I'm amazed that I have a friend that is a time trial, person, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I bragged you like crazy. I told him I was like, man, my friend Mimi's gonna be there. Like, I was so excited. I felt like a father, kind of like how fathers show off their kids. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, my daughter's in the all-star team. She's that. That was me at all my running run clubs, and being able to witness it myself, it was amazing, and thank you again for being here, especially for talking about this. But Mimi, one thing that I wanted to ask, like we already talked about kind of like what you went through the whole process of checking in your food,
Mhm.
but the day of the race, you're minutes, seconds away from starting. What's going through your mind at that point when you're kind of like at that roller coaster. When you're at that roller coaster and it's going up and you're thinking, "Oh my God, that's it. I can't get off this anymore. It's
Yeah.
too late." So what is going through your head when they're about to start this thing? You're in there with all the elite women, and what goes through Mimi's mind when this is happening?
I mean, I think that so much had led up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking even before, I'm thinking like a year prior, training for Boston,
Mm-hmm.
then taking a tiny break and then training all summer for Chicago, really
Yeah.
only getting 1 week off after Chicago, immediately having to go into this trial.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like when I was on that line and a couple things like, again, my hamstring was like not, it was fine during the race, but I think mentally beforehand, I just didn't want anything to be bothering me. And
Yeah.
then the heat it was already like 70 degrees when we started. And then
Wow.
there wasn't a cloud in the sky. And then you're in a tiny, tiny group relative to a marathon, a tiny group of women racing. And everyone around you is super fast. So I think relative to some of the other races, there was more things I was, I guess, high strung about in that moment. But then when I got on the line, it was kind of like, to be honest, none of that really matters because all of that stuff you went through was to get here.
Yeah.
So you are not going to, you don't, I guess I kind of took the pressure off myself of you're just going to race what you can.
Hmm.
And you're not, no matter what you do, I was not going to stop during that race. Like that
That's
was the
awesome.
big thing for me that I was like, you are going to finish this race no matter what, no matter if you get 20 minutes or sorry, 20 miles down and your hamstring starts to really, no matter if
Hmm.
you get super, super hot and,
Hmm.
you're just dying, you got to finish this
Yeah.
race. So I think that was really what was running through my mind of, I think I would have loved to go into it and be in a position where I could just get a PR. And to be honest, I felt like I was in really good shape. I don't think the stars aligned for me that day, as it did not align for many, many people in that
Yeah.
race.
Yeah.
But and I know this kind of isn't answering the question specifically, so we can talk a little bit about this later. But again, I think it was an extremely good experience for me to have a race where it didn't go the way I wanted and I still
Hmm.
finished.
Yeah.
And I think that for people who are listening on this podcast, um, to hear that even a really experienced runner who, even though I still had a good time
Yeah.
and I wasn't like super thrilled with my time, it still wasn't a bad time. But we all go through the same things as runners, regardless of if you're running a 6 hour marathon or you're running
Hmm.
a 2:30 marathon.
Yeah.
We all have days that we are just absolutely grinding and feel horrible out there. We all have days that we um, are pushing through little twinges or tweaks
Yeah.
or what. We all have days where we run through really, really bad weather. And I think in the situation of, unless something is like a dire medical emergency, like don't be afraid to continue running regardless of the time, because I think what's really awesome about these marathon races is to just finish these races is a battle within itself, regardless of the time, because it felt like I got into the middle of this race
Hmm.
when my body, it was so hot that I couldn't push anymore. There was no way I could push anymore. And it felt like I was moving really slow, even though I wasn't. But for me, it didn't feel like I was running against anyone out there but myself. And I feel like a lot of runners get to that point, especially if it's their first marathon and they've never done it and they hit
Yeah.
that wall at 18 where there are 20,000, 30,000 people around you in these big races, but you are
Hmm.
running against yourself.
Yeah.
And so if you can calm your thoughts, which I felt like my talk with myself on the line beforehand to be like, you're going to finish this no matter what. I set that precedent at the beginning. And so in the race, when it got really hard, not freaking out about how slowly you're going every mile, you're getting a little slower. It's more just like, we're finishing this.
Yeah.
That's let's just get it done. So that helped a lot. And I think that was kind of my mentality in this race relative to some other races where it was like, you have to get this time. This
Yeah.
really felt like a race, like, let's just try to finish.
Yeah, and you said something very important, and I think it happens a lot to the average runner where, they see this image of this athlete, running these marathons, and you think, oh, they run every single time perfect. Everything they do is on the dot and whatnot, and you tend to forget that they're human just like us, like you said, no matter if you run 6 hour marathon or 2 hour marathon or a 3 hour marathon, if the stars don't align, it just they don't, and I think we're seeing it a lot. Like right now, Kipchoge, when he went to Tokyo, like it did not align. Things weren't the
Mhm.
way they should have, and he struggled, but he finished, and I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure that was his mentality. Somewhere along that, race, he knew he just didn't have it to push. But, as runners, we always, and I do this to myself, I tell myself, if I cannot get the time that I want, then
Mhm.
finishing is the best thing, and then finish. Don't give up, and it's such a mental struggle. And I can only imagine how much of a mental struggle was it for you, because it was, like I said, it was hot. You knew you couldn't push,
Mhm.
but you still have that goal to finish, and that's awesome that you bring it up for all those people that are out there that are training for a marathon, for a spring marathon that's coming up, you know there's gonna be days that you're gonna say, man, today this workout kicked my butt, you know.
Mhm.
But you're still out there putting that miles, you're putting the effort, you're putting the effect, you know. So I love it that you touch base on that, because I do feel, myself included, at first, that I would see people better than me, faster than me, and at times it would discourage me and say, man, like I never see so and so struggle. Like, well, maybe it's just me, maybe I just don't have it, you know. And then, you know, little by little, I started realizing, you know what? We all have our bad days. One day
Everyone.
I'm gonna have I'm gonna have the best marathon ever, and I'm gonna be like, where did this come from? You know? And it's definitely awesome that you said that. But it's awesome that you know, you had that mental fortitude to be able to do that, because man, watching the marathon, the trial, I could tell, like, on people's faces, how hard it was, how grueling it was. And I can only try to put myself in that situation, and how would I react? You know, how the heat would, you know, basically change my game plan, you know. So, and speaking about game plans, and when you were there, what was more or less your game plan? How were you going to tackle the first miles? How were you going to tackle mile 20, which is the most popular, where your start? That's really where your race starts. What was the game plan that you had with your coach or whoever was helping you on figuring out what to do and how to do it, and how did it change? Did it change while you were running already, or did it change before? Tell us a little bit about that.
It definitely. So I knew, I had my my fuel that I was using. My it's a product called Carb Fuel, and it's
Mm-hmm.
got 50 grams per pouch. So 50 grams of carbs. So I knew I was going to take about three of those. I struggled to get gels down. I'm just not like even on my training runs, I'll only have one gel, even when I do a 24-mile training run. I'm just not
Mm-hmm.
someone who takes a lot or drinks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I had those, and then I knew they had water and Powerade on the course, and I'm like, I'm just going to take the water and Powerade when I need it. Usually they have cups, and on other races, I would take one cup every time I would have access to the water they have on the course, and I'll take
Yeah.
one, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Here, I established very quickly that every single stop I needed to not only take a sip, but take multiple sips of water.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, what I did, so it was an interesting setup. So they had Powerade, and then they had sponges, and
Mm-hmm.
then they had water.
Oh wow.
So what I would do, and again, I probably figured this out by mile three, and there
Mm-hmm.
was water stations every mile, and I did this every single mile
Mm-hmm.
thereafter. I would get the Powerade, hold it in my hand, and take sips. And then I would take the sponges. I
Mm-hmm.
would tuck them into my sports bra, like right here. And there's some pictures of me. And I just
Yeah.
kept it on because I'm like, these are keeping me like cold. So I
Yeah.
keep it here for the full mile while, the cold water is like running, keeping me cool,
Yeah.
especially like your armpits that have so much heat.
Yeah.
Um, and then I would take the water and dump it on myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that every single time. Powerade to drink, change out my sponges, get water every single mile. And it kept me cool enough. I would definitely be overheating. So by the time the sponges came, it would be like a nice relief. I'd sometimes put them on my neck, but I was pretty, for lack of a better term, religious about doing that during it. And that saved me because you just got so hot. And then at one point, I had this headband on, and I realized how hot it was, and I took it off, and it was like and I feel like what was happening was it felt so hot that you just needed to change something up every little
Yeah.
bit to
Yeah.
get a new sort of sensation or feeling. And then you'd
Yeah.
be okay until you overheat, and then you change something up, and then you get the release of sensation, because that's how it felt. And that was kind of what made me at least be able to keep turning over.
That's funny that you say that, because it is so true. One little trick that I do when I'm training, especially in the summer heat in Texas, regardless if you wake up at 5 in the morning or you run a little bit later, is
Mhm.
that I wear hats. I wear, because it helps. I sweat so much that the hats kind of keep sweat from coming to my eyes. When it gets
Mhm.
so hot, what I do is I take off my hat and I'll swing it like it's a helicopter. And for some reason, by doing that, the whatever the sweat's still in there, it cools down. So when I put it
Oh
on,
yeah.
it feels like like it cooled down, like it feels
Oh
cold.
yeah.
So I will do that like every other mile or something. So it's funny that you
Yeah.
find these things that give you, like you said, different different feelings where it feels like, it helps you give that little jolt of energy that you need,
Yeah.
But it's
Exactly.
funny that you say that because I thought I was the only one that would try to figure
Oh
out
no.
something to, keep you going, basically. But it's
Yeah.
it's it's cool that, it's again, that kind of goes again, like you had a game plan, but at the
Mhm.
moment that you were there, you had to change it. So
Oh yeah.
kudos for you again, and to the people that, think that you have to stick to the game plan. Sometimes the plan changes, maybe 3, 4 times within a race. You never know.
Mhm.
But it's so awesome to hear that. And a question I had, because I did not see this, and I watched it on TV. So obviously, there's a lot of stuff that they cut off. But do
Yep.
you guys, as finishers, do you guys get a medal or something?
No, we don't. Just the
Really?
top
I thought.
three. We got
Oh,
a
I thought.
we got a water bottle. We got our experience paid for. So
Okay, okay,
yeah,
that's
we get
that's
we
fair.
get some we got some stuff. We just didn't get a medal.
That would
But
be kind of cool still to get a finisher medal, because that
yeah,
I would
we'll
if
write it in for next year for 2028.
we're gonna have to put a petition for sure, because I
Yes.
think that'd be a cool thing for the finishers. A
Yeah.
water bottle's cool. I
Hmm.
mean, as runners, it's there's never enough water bottles, but
Yes,
but
exactly.
I think that a medal would be really cool, man. If I had done that race, I probably would be sleeping with my medal right now. Because and that's something. When I was looking at this event, I was like, I wonder when they finish, if they get like a medal, like a finisher medal for participating, because
Mhm.
it's still a really cool accolade to have. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, if I was doing it, I literally would sleep with it. How many people would still have it right net by their side or something like that? But it's kind of
Yeah.
kind of interesting that they don't. But I guess I understand too, because it's kind of like an official race. And I mean, in the Olympics,
It's
they're not going to
almost
give everybody medals. So.
Yeah, it's almost like in college for track and field, the way you qualify for nationals is you
Hmm.
have regionals, and then there's a West region and East region, and it's
Hmm.
divided by the Mississippi, and the
Okay.
top 48 qualifying times, jumps, throws, whatever it is,
Hmm.
qualify for that event in the
Hmm.
East, and then the 48 top times event, throws, jumps, qualify for each event in the West. And
Okay.
then from those, the top 12 of those events from each
Hmm.
regional make it to nationals. So only 24 people go to nationals. So this was almost like the regionals to get to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
then the Olympics are, and no one gets any, I don't think people get any medals in regionals. It's just another stepping stone. It's technically the stepping stone to get to the
Yeah.
next thing, which is where the money's happening.
Well, that's just a question that I had, and I was waiting to talk to you, because I was like, man, if she had a medal, I want to see it.
Yeah, no, I wish I could show you the water bottle, but that's it.
No, and for the people out there, that struggle in their marathon training or whatnot, how do you stay motivated during your training block? What do you do? Anything in particular, or what keeps you motivated from that goal in hand when you're training?
That's a really good question. I mean, definitely running with teammates and being on the same cycle as a group of people, I think
Yeah.
is really, really motivating. And I was training with one other athlete, Jennifer Pope, and we did a lot of our runs and exercise, or I guess workouts together,
Mm-hmm.
along with a couple of other individuals who were not obviously doing the same race, but like along the same cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So waking up in like the mornings is a lot easier to get our workouts done when you know there's people waiting for you and kind of how holding you accountable because you
Yeah.
said show up at a time to do a workout with them, so you have to show up. So I feel like that keeps me motivated a lot. And I think there needs to be like I think to be honest, it was a little bit easier training for Chicago because there was a very, very concrete goal about making it to the trials.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas at the trials, I wanted to get a time goal,
Yeah.
but I think it was kind of like this is the event.
Yeah.
Granted, maybe in a couple of years we'll see where I'm at. Yeah, that was only my fourth marathon, so maybe if I get 10 under my belt at the next trials, it'll be a
Yeah.
different story, and I'll be saying, I want to be in the top 25. I want to be really competitive with this thing. But I think I really just wanted to go get this. I mean, a year before, within that year, I set this goal of making the trials. I didn't even know I could do it. So I think having a little bit more specific goals about what you're trying to achieving. So that for
Mm-hmm.
you, it's qualifying for Boston. Um, you know,
Yeah.
with those specific goals, it helps me stay motivated in other aspects of my life, not so much with the training, but kind of the sacrifices that you have to make. I think I remember my dad sent me this quote before either Chicago or the trials that said something like Kipchoge said the real people who and I'm butchering the quote, but the real like training is through sacrifice and saying no. And so, I would be super dedicated to my training, always running in the morning and doing either weights or my swimming cross training in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Before a month and a half to 2 months before I stopped drinking any alcohol, trying to get to bed at 9 o'clock every single night,
Yeah.
different things like that. I had to take a big professional exam in February and probably not the smartest, but I, had to give up something. And unfortunately, studying took a little bit of the back burner on that. I had enough time after the race to cram and get it done. But,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, when you're training for goals or doing goals that are really important for you,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a hard sacrifice, but you got to kind of, is staying up super late when you have a big workout the night before. It doesn't maybe matter one time, but if it's a consistent habit that happens over a training cycle, it does make a big difference.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing is knowing what to say yes to and what to say no to. And I think when you get your motivations aligned and when you get your goals aligned, it makes it a lot clearer of what those need to be.
Yeah, and that's awesome because even for like myself, that I try to do that when I'm training for a marathon that I know I want to do good. I will start saying no to a lot of things.
Mhm.
Friends, like we have a running group that on Fridays, shout out to the freaks, that they like to go on I think it's the first Friday of every month. They go do their run, and then they go to this place where it's a cumbia, like they play cumbia music, and it's amazing. It's an amazing time. I don't know how to dance, but but I still go out there and dance with them. But when you're dedicated to a goal and set, I've had to say no to these things, and it's so hard. It's so hard because you want to socialize, you want to see your friends. But if you're, like you said, if you're dedicated to something and you make a routine out of it, then, it's gonna have a benefit, So, kudos to you on being able to, set those boundaries,
Yeah.
and
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 I and
and
I,
it also,
well, I was
go
just gonna,
ahead.
and I completely, when I say those things for my
Mm-hmm.
other training cycles, when I've gotten my PR, I've drank and I have sweets. I've never stopped up sweets. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to make that comment in terms of that people who do these can't reach these goals because there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who do all these things.
Yeah.
It just depends on what you can tolerate and know your body. And I knew I increased my mileage for this cycle on top of
Mm-hmm.
adding more cross training
Mm-hmm.
and I have a very, very physically active job. And I just physically couldn't do these hard workouts and be on my feet all day at work on top of staying out super, super late, night before big
Yeah.
workouts or even 2 days before big workouts because I would crash. But
Yeah. Yeah.
some people, if they don't have those escapes to have, calm down and do whatever, and they're so stressed out because they don't have that part of their enjoyment and it messes
Mm-hmm.
with the training too,
Yeah.
then that's not good either. So I think it just, again, depends on what you can handle and what you tolerate and what you think you
Yeah.
need to be the best you.
A balance, definitely find a
Mhm.
balance between your training and your social life and your
Mhm.
professional life and your house life, everything has to
Yes,
balance out,
exactly.
but definitely for me, yes, I love drinking beer. I absolutely love drinking beer, and knowing that cutting the beer off would make be I would be able to be hydrated better So for
Mhm.
me, cutting the beer as much as I like it, when I'm very dedicated, is something that I have to do. So
Mhm.
definitely, it's you're right. The balance out, because even when I'm doing my training block, which usually it's about 18 weeks,
Mhm.
I will give myself at least maybe one or two like days where I could say, you know what? I had a hard training week.
Yeah.
This Sunday I'm gonna splurge. I'm gonna have a beer with my friends. Maybe instead of going to bed at 9, I'll push it to 11, but that's it. But
Mhm.
it's still good to have those little rewards as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Because especially for marathon training, it can get grueling. It can get hard. It can get uh sometimes humble you in a way,
Mhm.
but it's awesome to hear that you have your balance. Like you said, your sweets are still there, but
Oh
you
yeah.
you go to sleep early, so
Yeah.
you that kind of balances out, right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
another question about your training: do you think, or did you see a difference in training for let's say for Chicago,
Mhm.
or training for the trials? Was there any difference? Were they kind of the same, or did you incorporate more things because of the importance of a time trial? Did
Yeah.
you do something different compared to your other training blocks?
I did probably around probably like 8 to 10 more miles in my peak week. So my
Hmm.
mileage, and I hit like a month straight where I was near 80 or 80 plus miles,
Hmm.
which is high mileage for me. I tried that, and then I was adding swimming and trying to do weightlifting a little bit more. Um, and I think it did make a difference. But I think where I faulted was miss I was doing more aerobic activity and not as much training. So a little bit more with that mileage and then not enough mobility.
Okay.
Um, so when I'm doing Chicago again,
Okay.
and I want to go back down to probably 70 to 75 miles a week. If I need to swim or do some biking a little bit more, that's fine. I'll keep my hard workout days long and my long runs long, but I might take a whole day out of the week of running just to do more strength training and mobility training. Because I do feel like the older you get, if you neglect that stuff, it creeps up on you. And I felt like
Hmm.
it crept up on me. After a year of really hard training, not giving my body a rest, I wasn't recovering enough. And like I said, I have an active job. So I felt like I would do my really hard workouts, immediately go to work. You're on your feet all day. I would go
Yeah.
swim after work. And I was tired and probably not prioritizing like stretching, and not even stretching, but just like hip range of motion,
Yeah.
making sure I wasn't locking up. So, um, although I do think the added aerobic activity made me stronger and I was hitting good paces on my workouts, it shouldn't just because you hit higher mileage doesn't mean you're going to have better results if you neglect the important things like the specific strength training and injury prevention
Yeah.
exercise. So
No, and
I definitely want to focus that on my next cycle.
and that's awesome that you said that, because that's something I learned on this last training cycle. I added strength training, so I try to go twice to the gym,
Mhm.
and work more on the upper body, mid body, and stuff like that. But I also incorporated something that it's called Hot Works. I don't know if they have it over there in Dallas. It's basically a
Yeah.
sauna where you do
Mhm.
yoga and you Pilates for 45-35 minutes, but it's inside a sauna. But
Mhm.
basically using your body weight, which the first time I did it, I'm like, man, I can lift 35, 45 pound weights. This should be cakewalk, right? No,
Yeah.
it's way harder. But thanks to that, um, I feel that my running structure has become better because I have a better core. I'm stronger, and I feel like I'm getting less hurt at
Yeah.
times.
Mhm.
And I never did that. I've ran 5 marathons, and out of the 5 marathons, I've never ever did strength training. I thought
Mhm.
running was more than enough.
Yeah.
And now that I've incorporated these other things, and took, like you said, I actually did take one day out of my running to be able to incorporate some more strength. And it's amazing how you feel as a runner once you
Yeah.
go out there and do the long runs or the workouts, the interval running and all these things. And it's crazy how much of a better runner I feel now. I really do think that I've increased my speed by at least 20 to 30 seconds
Oh,
faster,
that's
which
awesome. That's
is
awesome.
amazing. It's amazing. But and I'm glad you brought that up because for a lot of people out there that think, hey, just it's running, 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 running. No, you got to add something to also give your legs some rest. Like you said, swimming is awesome. Swimming
Mhm.
is a all body, all your body, your muscles are moving, but it's giving the ground and pound a rest. You're not
Mhm.
hitting the pavement much because you're in water. So yes, it's very, very important to find what works for you. Maybe swimming is not for everybody too. Maybe cycling, maybe, doing some cycling sessions, yoga. Definitely yoga is amazing. I never did yoga until I did hot works, and man, I feel that I can stretch much better and I
Yeah, that's
get
awesome.
a lot better results. So definitely
Yeah.
kudos for that as well, man. For sure.
Yeah. And one thing too, I
Hmm.
feel like for a lot of runners who started running post their college, and not saying that they ran in college, but they got into it in their quote unquote adult lives.
Hmm.
Um, as someone who ran in college, I've been on the side of things where you're super type A about hitting your mileage, and not hitting that mileage for that week is just awful, and you're willing to run when something's bothering you to get that mileage.
Hmm.
And I take an approach now: if something is bothering me, I shut it down because A, this is for fun. Why would I be running if I'm in pain?
Yeah.
And two, pain is our body's way of saying something isn't right. So running on something isn't going to necessarily heal it. You got to fix the problem, whether that's a weakness problem, whether it's a mobility problem, whether it's you just, our bodies aren't used to doing this, or not always meant to be running so hard. Sometimes they
Yeah.
need breaks, and it's our body's way. So I guess for people who might be going through something, or they're nervous about missing one day because
Yeah.
their miles are lower, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
In the base, we don't train for marathons in a month. Now if we did all this in a month, that would be a different story, but
Yeah.
we're doing this over 4 to 3 months, and we do that for a reason: to build ourselves in days to take a day off if your body's hurting, or to
Hmm.
not miss mileage. Because in the grand scheme of things, I know we put it in a week, but time is relative, right?
Yeah.
It's the whole cycle.
Yeah.
So if just take this advice from someone who's been on the other end, who has pushed through it, it's not worth it. It actually doesn't make you a better runner. In fact, it probably makes an injury or something that's
Hmm.
been bothering you get prolonged, when it could have been stopped in a couple of days if you just took off. So
Yeah.
use it as a way, allow yourself that break, because a a good runner and a smart runner does do that.
Great points. And it took me a while to learn that, to let go of those weeks. Maybe 1 week I didn't hit my mileage. And
Mhm.
I was one of those. I was one of those. I'm like, man, I did not hit my goal. I have to go out there. I have to get my, miles. And it took a while for me to do it. But now I think about, oh, I can't run today. It's okay. My body's
Yeah.
probably telling me I need to rest. And like you said, it's so long of a time frame that you have to train for that reason, to give you those on and offs that you will get. Because at the end, like we started at the beginning, we're human. Sometimes the body needs maybe an additional day of rest that you
Yeah.
weren't expecting, or it wasn't on the schedule. But sometimes that's what you need. That's
Yeah.
exactly what you need.
And I'm saying that because my internal voice is strong too. I still get, antsy about it.
Hmm.
But I've been trying to remind myself that, especially having someone who's been in highly competitive running situations pretty
Yeah.
much whole life. It wasn't like that at the beginning of my career. And for a lot of adult runners who are starting out marathons, it's the
Hmm.
beginning of their running career. And it's a normal feeling to have, especially when everyone is such a running buff around you, talking about mileage, talking about this.
Yeah,
Um, a lot of vets will know it's okay to take a day off if you need it,
for
and it
sure.
will pay dividends in the long run.
For sure, for sure. And Mimi, you did mention that you are doing Chicago this year.
Yeah.
And what's the goal? What are you looking into? getting with Chicago? A time, a qualifier for Boston? What exactly is the goal?
I think I got the Boston qualifier based off my trial run, so I should
Okay.
be okay to do that. I probably will do Boston in the fall. I wasn't able to do it this year because it's my mom's 60th birthday, my sister's bachelorette
Oh
party, all
no.
this stuff. I'm like, I gotta be. I've put a lot of family stuff on the back burner
Yeah,
for
yeah.
this running stuff. It's time for me to be their fans because they've been mine. But for Chicago, I got definitely would like to get in the low 30s. I was about mid 30s last time. I would like to get low 30s. I just squeaked into the top 20th of females at that finish. So I want to try to, I'm in the American Development Program again. I would love to be at the top of that program again, finish
Hmm.
wise, and see if I can get into that low 30s spot. I think that with all this running experience, taking a little bit of a break after trials, I'll be heading into it with a
Okay.
different mindset and frame of reference and kind of experience. So I hope I can get another really fast time and go from there.
Well, we're definitely going to be rooting for you. I want to do Chicago so bad again, so I think I'm going to probably try to do it next year.
You're
Um,
going to Berlin, right?
yeah, Berlin. Aren't you doing it
Awesome.
too?
I wanted to, but financially, just too many weddings and birthdays this year. I couldn't swing it. So Chicago is home for me. So at least I get a free place to stay with my
Oh,
family.
that always helps. That definitely helps. But
Yeah, yeah.
speaking about Chicago, are you a deep dish kind of person, or you just
Oh
like
yeah.
regular pizza?
I will go for regular pizza more often, but I do
Hmm.
love deep dish, and I like Lou Malnati's the best.
Oh
Giordano's is
my.
good, but Lou Malnati's is my favorite.
I've tried it when I went to Chicago, what is it, 3, 4 years ago now.
Hmm.
I love pizza, and it gives
Yeah,
me the worst heartburn ever. But I don't care. I don't care if it's good pizza.
gotta risk it for the
It,
biscuit, right?
exactly, exactly. And I went there. I asked some of my friends that have been there, and I told them, where can I get the best Chicago deep dish pizza? Because I've
Mhm.
never had it. And oh my God, I'm in love with Chicago deep dish pizza. It's now
Yeah.
one of my favorites. Uh,
Well, you can
it's
order
awesome.
Lou Malnati's online. They'll send it to you frozen. It's
Really?
expensive, but if you want to treat yourself after some of your marathons and races coming
Oh
up,
my God. I might have to do that for carb loading before the
there you
marathon,
go.
man. Jeez. Now I'm
Not with
gonna
the heartburn, not with the heartburn.
we'll figure that out. We're gonna have to figure that out. But I just love pizza.
Yeah.
I always tell my fiance, if I can have 2 meals the rest of my life, it'd probably be tacos and pizza.
I'll go with you on that. I agree.
I love it. I love it. And maybe something that we're gonna try to do in this new podcast, a tradition that we're gonna try to start, which is you're gonna be the first one. Um, do you I would like to for you to have, or do you have a question that I will ask the next guest on episode 2, which
Mhm.
will be a runner. So what question would you ask our next guest?
My question is, when you get on the line for your race, who is the one person that you kind of think about the most? And regardless of if it's a family member, a friend, everyone has an origin running story. And a
Hmm.
lot of times it involves someone very special
Yeah.
in their life. And I want to know, for me, I usually write initials down on my wrist. I want to know whose initials are you writing down on your wrist before your race and why?
Awesome question. Awesome question. And you have to answer that question. Who's the one person you think when you, putting yourself in the starting line?
I wrote, back in 2022 to 2023, when I first moved down that first year in Texas, unfortunately, both of my grandparents, my grandpa and my mom's and my grandpa on my dad's side
Okay.
passed away. And my one grandpa on my mom's side was there for my first marathon ever.
Awesome.
And he didn't get to see my past three or that, going to the trials, but he was one of my best friends. And I just always make sure that both my grandparents, both my grandpa and granddad are running with me when I get on the line.
And trust me, I'm pretty sure they were there when you were running the Olympic time
Yeah.
trials. They were there in spirit and they were there in your mind. So that's awesome. That's so awesome. I'm gonna answer that question too.
Yeah,
I
please.
think
Yeah.
about my daughter. So I actually had my daughter make me a bracelet for New York
Oh,
with her name.
oh,
So it's
awesome.
always
Oh,
my
that's even
daughter.
better than a
Yeah.
shoot. That's even better than writing initials down.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
she
awesome.
thought it was corny, of course. When you have a 17-year-old, she'll probably think it's corny. But I had it with me, and on the moments of when I was struggling,
Mm-hmm.
that I looked at it and I was like, that's why I'm doing this.
Yes.
This
Yeah,
is the
that's
why.
awesome.
We all have our whys,
Yep.
and that for me is my why. And like you had your why with your grandparents.
Yep.
And it's awesome. It's always, I think that's the greatest thing about running. There's always that one person or people that motivate you, that keep you wanting to try harder and
Yes.
wanting to go for these outrageous goals that most people think. But it's always awesome to push that body as much as you can, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, Mimi, I absolutely love having you here. You were amazing. Again, congratulations on the time trials,
Thank you.
and we will definitely keep an eye on the Chicago Marathon. I have a feeling you're gonna hit those goals, and enjoy the parties that you're gonna go. And I will be very bitter that I will be in Berlin and not see you. Okay, so
Well,
I
I'm
hope
gonna
you're
be jealous
partying
that you're in
hard.
Berlin, so we'll toast each other. Best of luck in this hot summer training.
Oh yes,
And
oh
we'll
my
talk
God.
soon, okay?
Yes, for sure. And have a good one. And thank you again for being here with us.
Of course. All right. Bye.